380 million years ago, the world was a very different place. Vast, shallow seas covered much of what is now North America, Europe, and North Africa. These warm subtropical waters teemed with life during the late Devonian period, an era often called the Age of Fishes. The oceans were ruled not by sharks or whales, but by an ancient group known as placoderms, armored fish whose bodies were shielded by heavy, bony plates. Among them, one creature stood supreme as the undisputed apex predator, Dunkleosteus terrelli. Dunkleosteus was a monster of the deep. Adults reached lengths of up to 13 feet, with some exceptional individuals stretching a little longer, and weighed as much as 4,000 pounds. Its head and front half were encased in thick armor plates, forming a tank-like shield that protected it from attack. The plates were fused into a rigid structure, giving the fish a massive, bulbous skull with bulging eyes, positioned high on the head for spotting prey in the murky waters. Behind the armored front, the body tapered into a powerful, muscular tail that propelled it through the open ocean with surprising speed for such a heavily built animal. What truly made Dunkleosteus terrifying were its jaws. Unlike modern fish with rows of teeth, it had no true teeth at all. Instead, its upper and lower jaws were lined with sharp, self-sharpening, bony blades, long, curved shearing edges that functioned like massive scissors. When the mouth closed, these blades slid past each other, slicing through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. The bite force was immense. Estimates place it at around 5,000 to 7,000 newtons at the rear of the jaw, with pressure at the blade tips reaching up to 80,000 pounds per square inch. This was one of the most powerful bites ever recorded in any vertebrate, rivaling the crushing power of much later predators like large crocodiles or even tyrannosaurs. Dunkleosteus cruised the pelagic waters, far from the seafloor, where it hunted in the sunlit upper layers. It was an active swimmer, using its armored body to ram and overpower prey. When it opened its massive mouth, it could do so in a fraction of a second, creating a sudden vacuum that sucked smaller fish straight into its maw. Once inside, the blades did the rest, shearing apart victims in an instant. Prey included smaller placoderms, early sharks with flexible cartilage skeletons, bony fish, and armored invertebrates like ammonites with thick shells. Evidence from fossils shows that Dunkleosteus even turned on its own kind. Bite marks matching its distinctive blades have been found on the armor of smaller individuals, suggesting cannibalism when food was scarce. Juveniles lived differently. Young Dunkleosteus were more slender and had less developed jaws, so they fed on softer-bodied creatures, small fish, and invertebrates that required less force to subdue. As they grew, their diet shifted to tougher, better defended prey. The blades lengthened and strengthened with age, allowing adults to tackle armored animals that other predators could not. This growth pattern made Dunkleosteus a true super predator, dominating the food chain in an ocean filled with diverse life. The Devonian seas were a battlefield of evolving defenses and offenses. Prey animals developed thicker shells and faster swimming to escape, while predators like Dunkleosteus pushed the boundaries of what jaws could achieve. For millions of years, this armored terror patrolled the waters unchallenged. No other creature of its time could match its size, armor, or raw destructive power. Yet even giants fall. Around 359 million years ago, at the end of the Devonian, a catastrophic event struck the oceans. Massive changes in sea levels and oxygen levels swept through the waters, wiping out many marine species. The placoderms, including Dunkleosteus, vanished entirely. Their reign ended abruptly, leaving behind only scattered fossils embedded in ancient black shales. Today, those remains tell the story of a time when the seas belonged to armored monsters with blades for teeth, and one fish ruled them all. 380 million years ago, the Devonian seas were a realm of constant tension. Every creature lived under the shadow of predation, and none cast a longer shadow than Dunkleosteus terrelli. Its armored head alone could measure more than 3 feet in length, a battering ram of bone that no contemporary predator dared challenge. The fish moved with deliberate power, its tail sweeping in slow, powerful arcs that drove its massive body forward like a living torpedo. When Dunkleosteus hunted, it relied on ambush as much as speed. It would cruise silently through the open water, eyes fixed on the silhouettes of schools of smaller fish drifting above the hazy bottom. Then, in a sudden, explosive lunge, it would surge forward. Its mouth opened with terrifying speed, faster than any modern fish could manage, expanding the throat cavity and creating a powerful suction that pulled prey inward before they could react. Once the victim was inside, the jaws slammed shut. The bony blades, honed by constant use and regrowth, sheared through scales, flesh, and even bone in a single clean stroke. Fragments of prey would drift away in clouds of blood and tissue, while the predator swallowed the larger pieces whole. Fossil evidence reveals the brutality of these encounters. On the armor plates of smaller placoderms like Bothriopus and Arthrodira relatives, paleontologists have found deep, crescent-shaped gouges that match the exact curvature of Dunkleosteus blades. Some specimens show healed scars, proof that the prey escaped barely. Other fossils display multiple overlapping bite marks, suggesting that Dunkleosteus sometimes attacked the same individual repeatedly until it succumbed. In one remarkable case from the Cleveland Shale of Ohio, a partial Dunkleosteus skull was found with the remains of a smaller placoderm still lodged between its jaws, the victim's armor crushed but not fully swallowed. Cannibalism was not uncommon. Adult Dunkleosteus were solitary hunters, and when prey grew scarce during seasonal migrations or environmental stress, they turned on juveniles of their own species. Bite marks on young Dunkleosteus armor plates are common in museum collections, and in some cases the attacker was clearly an adult of the same species. This behavior ensured that only the strongest and most aggressive individuals survived to reach full size. The armor itself was a marvel of natural engineering. The head shield consisted of two massive plates, a broad dorsal plate covering the top of the skull and a ventral plate beneath the throat. These were connected by a complex joint that allowed the head to tilt upward when the mouth opened. The plates were thickest around the eyes and jaw hinges, where the greatest stress occurred during biting. Behind the head, a flexible joint permitted the armored front to move independently of the more lightly built posterior body, giving the fish surprising maneuverability for its size. Inside the mouth, the blades were not fixed like true teeth. They grew from the dermal bone of the jaw itself and were continuously sharpened by abrasion against each other every time the mouth closed. Over time, the blades wore down at the tips but regrew from the base, maintaining a razor edge throughout the animal's life. This self-sharpening mechanism allowed Dunkleosteus to tackle prey with shells and armor far thicker than anything modern fish jaws could handle. Despite its dominance, Dunkleosteus was not invincible. Smaller, faster predators occasionally harassed juveniles, and larger adults sometimes suffered injuries from their own kind during territorial disputes. Fossilized armor plates show healed fractures and puncture wounds, evidence that life at the top of the food chain came with constant risk. The Devonian oceans were rich with competition. Early sharks with sharp teeth and flexible bodies darted through the same waters, while swarms of bony fish with heavy scales and swift tails tried to outmaneuver the armored giants. Yet for tens of millions of years, Dunkleosteus remained the unchallenged ruler. Its combination of size, armor, bite force, and hunting strategy made it the perfect superpredator of its time, a living weapon forged by evolution in an age when the seas belonged to armored fish. 359 million years ago, the Devonian world began to unravel. For millions of years, the shallow seas had flourished, supporting an explosion of marine life unlike anything seen before. Placoderms dominated every niche, from tiny bottom dwellers to the colossal Dunkleosteus that ruled the open waters. Then, almost overnight, the balance shattered. A series of massive environmental crises struck the oceans. Sea levels dropped dramatically as continents shifted and vast areas of shallow shelf became dry land. Oxygen levels in the water plummeted, creating widespread dead zones where most fish and invertebrates could not survive. Massive volcanic activity released enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and toxic metals into the atmosphere and seas. The combination was lethal. Coral reefs collapsed. Ammonites and trilobites suffered heavy losses, and the placoderms, the armored fish that had reigned supreme, were hit hardest of all. Dunkleosteus, with its heavy bony armor and high metabolic demands, was particularly vulnerable. The thick plates that protected it from predators now became a liability. In low oxygen waters, the energy required to maintain such massive armor proved too costly. Smaller, lighter-bodied fish and early sharks with flexible cartilage skeletons and lower oxygen needs began to outcompete the giants. Juveniles of Dunkleosteus struggled to grow to adulthood as food became scarce and oxygen-poor layers spread across the seafloor. Fossil records from the latest Devonian strata tell a grim story. In places like the Cleveland Shale and the Kellwasser horizons of Europe, the once abundant remains of Dunkleosteus and its relatives grow suddenly rare. The last specimens appear in layers just below the boundary that marks the end of the period. After that, they disappear completely. No trace of placoderms has ever been found in rocks younger than 359 million years ago. The entire group vanished in what paleontologists call the Hangenberg event, one of the most severe extinction pulses in Earth's history. The seas fell silent. The armored terrors that had patrolled the Devonian oceans for tens of millions of years were gone. In their place, new forms of life slowly emerged. Early ray-fin fish diversified rapidly, sharks adapted and spread into new niches. The age of fishes gave way to the age of tetrapods as the first four-limbed vertebrates began to crawl onto land. For centuries, the fossils of Dunkleosteus lay buried and forgotten in ancient black shales. It was not until the late 19th century that paleontologists began to uncover its remains in large numbers. In 1873, the first partial skull was described from Ohio. By the early 20th century, complete heads and body fragments revealed the true scale of the creature. In 1932, the species Dunkleosteus terrelli was formally named in honor of the American paleontologist David Dunkel and the Ohio geologist J. Terrell. Today, Dunkleosteus is one of the most iconic prehistoric animals. Reconstructions show it as a nightmare predator with a gaping maw lined by scissor-like blades, eyes set high for hunting in dim waters, and a body armored like a medieval warship. Museums around the world display massive casts of its skull, some more than 3 feet long, allowing visitors to stand inside the open jaws and imagine the power of a bite that could crush bone like dry twigs. Recent studies using finite element analysis have confirmed the extraordinary strength of those jaws. Computer models show that Dunkleosteus could generate bite forces exceeding 5,000 newtons at the back of the mouth, with pressure at the blade tips reaching tens of thousands of pounds per square inch. High-speed CT scans of juvenile skulls reveal that the blades grew continuously and self-sharpened throughout life, a feature unique among vertebrates. New discoveries continue to emerge. In 2023, a remarkably preserved juvenile specimen from Morocco showed soft tissue impressions around the head, hinting at possible skin folds and sensory structures. In 2024, bite mark studies on ammonite shells confirmed that Dunkleosteus routinely crushed thick-shelled prey, something no other Devonian predator could achieve. Though Dunkleosteus has been extinct for more than 350 million years, its legacy endures. It represents the pinnacle of armored predation in the ancient seas, a super predator whose combination of size, armor, and devastating bite made it the undisputed ruler of its world. In an age when life in the oceans was still experimenting with new forms, Dunkleosteus showed just how formidable evolution could become. And even now, when we gaze at its fossilized skull, we glimpse a time when the seas were ruled by monsters with blades for teeth. Thank you for watching. The ancient oceans may be silent now, but their stories are still being told. See you in the next episode.